Giangio then led Pinocchio to the kitchen garden and taught him how to turn the pumping machine. Pinocchio immediately began to work, but before he had drawn up the 100 buckets of water, the perspiration was pouring from his head to his feet. Never before had he undergone such fatigue. "Up until now," said the gardener, "the labor of turning the pumping machine was performed by my little donkey, but the poor animal is dying." "Will you take me to see him?" said Pinocchio. "Willingly." When Pinocchio went into the stable, he saw a beautiful little donkey stretched on the straw, worn out from hunger and overwork. After looking at him earnestly, he said to himself, much troubled, "I am sure I know this little donkey. His face is not new to me." And bending over him, he asked in asinine language, "Who are you?" At this question, the little donkey opened his dying eyes and answered in broken words in the same language, "I am Candlewick." And having again closed his eyes, he expired. "Oh, poor Candlewick!" said Pinocchio in a low voice, and taking a handful of straw, he dried a tear that was rolling down his face. "Do you grieve for a donkey that cost you nothing?" said the gardener. "What must it be to me who bought him for my ready money?" "I must tell you, he was my friend." "Your friend?" "One of my schoolfellows." "How?" shouted Giangio, laughing loudly. "How? Had you donkeys for schoolfellows? I can imagine what wonderful studies you must have made." The puppet, who felt much mortified at these words, did not answer, but taking his tumbler of milk, which was still quite warm, he returned to the hut. From that day, for more than 5 months, he continued to get up at daybreak every morning to go and turn the pumping machine, in order to earn the tumbler of milk that was of such benefit to his father in his bad state of health. Nor was he satisfied with this, for during the time that he had left he learned to make hampers and baskets of rushes. With the money he obtained by selling them, he was able, with great economy, to provide for all the daily expenses. Among other things, he constructed an elegant little wheel-chair, in which he could take his father out on fine days to breathe a mouthful of fresh air. By his industry, ingenuity, and his anxiety to work and to overcome difficulties, he not only succeeded in maintaining his father in comfort, who continued infirm, but he also contrived to put aside 40 pence to buy himself a new coat. One morning he said to his father, "I am going to the neighboring market to buy myself a jacket, a cap, and a pair of shoes. When I return," he added, laughing, "I shall be so well dressed that you will take me for a fine gentleman." On leaving the house he began to run merrily and happily along. All at once he heard himself called by name, and turning round, he saw a big snail crawling out from the hedge. "Do you not know me?" asked the snail. "It seems to me, and yet I am not sure." "Do you not remember the snail who was lady's maid to the fairy with the blue hair? Do you not remember the time when I came downstairs to let you in, and you were caught by your foot, which you had stuck through the house door?" "I remember it all!" shouted Pinocchio. "Tell me quickly, my beautiful little snail, where have you left my good fairy? What is she doing? Has she forgiven me? Does she still remember me? Does she still wish me well? Is she far from here? Can I go to see her?" To all these rapid, breathless questions, the snail replied in her usual manner, "My dear Pinocchio, the poor fairy is lying in bed at the hospital." "At the hospital!" "It is only too true. Overtaken by 1,000 misfortunes, she has fallen seriously ill. She has not even enough to buy herself a mouthful of bread." "Is it really so? Oh, what sorrow you have given me! Oh, poor fairy, poor fairy, poor fairy! But I had 1,000,000 I would run and carry it to her. But I have only 40 pence. Here they are. I was going to buy a new coat. Take them, snail, and carry them at once to my good fairy." "And your new coat?" "What matters my new coat? I would sell even these rags that I have on to be able to help her. Go, snail, and be quick, and in 2 days return to this place, for I hope I shall be able to give you some more money. Up to this time I have worked to maintain my papa. From to-day I will work 5 hours more that I may also maintain my good mamma. Good-bye, snail. I shall expect you in 2 days." The snail, contrary to her usual habits, began to run like a lizard in a hot August sun. That evening Pinocchio, instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, sat up till midnight had struck, and instead of making 8 baskets of rushes he made 16. Then he went to bed and fell asleep, and while he slept, he thought that he saw the fairy smiling and beautiful, who, after having kissed him, said to him, "Well done, Pinocchio. To reward you for your good heart, I will forgive you for all that is past. Boys who minister tenderly to their parents, and assist them in their misery and infirmities, are deserving of great praise and affection, even if they cannot be cited as examples of obedience and good behavior. Try to do better in the future, and you will be happy." At this moment his dream ended, and Pinocchio opened his eyes and awoke. But imagine his astonishment on awakening when he discovered that he was no longer a wooden puppet, but that he had become a boy, like all other boys. He gave a glance around and saw that the straw walls of the hut had disappeared, and that he was in a pretty little room, furnished and arranged with a simplicity that was almost elegance. Jumping out of bed, he found ready for him a new suit of clothes, a new cap, a pair of new leather boots that fitted him beautifully. He was hardly dressed when he naturally put his hands in his pockets and pulled out a little ivory purse on which these words were written: "The fairy with blue hair returns the 40 pence to her dear Pinocchio, and thanks him for his good heart." He opened the purse, and instead of 40 copper pennies, he saw 40 shining gold pieces, fresh from the mint. He then went and looked at himself in the glass, and he thought he was someone else, for he no longer saw the usual reflection of a wooden puppet. He was greeted instead by the image of a bright, intelligent boy, with chestnut hair, blue eyes, and looking as happy and joyful as if he were the Easter holidays. In the midst of all these wonders, which succeeded each other so quickly, Pinocchio felt quite bewildered, and he could not tell whether he was really awake or whether he was dreaming with his eyes open. "Where is my papa?" he exclaimed suddenly, and going into the next room he found old Geppetto quite well, lively, and in good humour, just as he had been formerly. He had already resumed his trade of wood carving, and was designing a rich and beautiful frame of leaves, flowers, and heads of animals. "Satisfy my curiosity, dear papa," said Pinocchio, throwing his arms around his neck and covering him with kisses. "How can this sudden change be accounted for?" "This sudden change in our home is all your doing," answered Geppetto. "How is it my doing?" "Because when boys who have behaved badly turn over a new leaf and become good, they have the power of bringing content and happiness to their families." "And where has the old wooden Pinocchio hidden himself?" "There he is," answered Geppetto, and he pointed to a big puppet leaning against a chair, with its head on one side, its arms dangling, and its legs so crossed and bent that it was really a miracle it remained standing. Pinocchio turned and looked at it, and after he had looked at it for a short time, he said to himself with great complacency, "How ridiculous I was when I was a puppet, and how glad I am that I have become a well-behaved little boy."